Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest, the official podcast of the Brock Press, where we take you beyond the headlines and do a deep dive into some of the many interesting articles written by our incredible team this week. My name is Noah Nickel. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Brock Press, and today I'm joined by our managing editor, Holly Morrison. And that's it for the first time, just the two of us. So how are you doing, Holly?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling a little lonely. I can't believe the entire staff just abandoned all of us. Well, the two of us.
I know.
How dare they have midterms?
They left us hanging this week, but we'll have a better time without them.
Okay, we forgive them, I think.
You think, yeah. You think we do.
I think. I'm thinking about whether we forgive them.
Oh, we miss our third guest, and this show will feel emptier without one of our co-workers, but we will go forward regardless. And we have good stories to talk about, so hopefully it will work out with just the two of us anyways. But fingers crossed, and we'll see how it goes. So with that, let's get into the articles. So the first article we're going to talk about today is Devani's article about the license plate renewal fees being axed, as well as the sticker, which is technically what you were paying for, but that's obviously it's not a true one-to-one comparison in that sense. But regardless, the stickers are going away, the renewal fees going away. You'll still have to renew, but it will be for free, and you will not get the renewal sticker for your license plate. So many people are happy about this because they're also going to be providing refunds for anyone that purchased their renewal since it was March last year. So a lot of people are getting refunded. So yeah, people are excited about that, but then obviously others, anyone who has the license plate fee is not going to be mad about getting a couple $100 back. But people are observant to the fact that this is clearly an pre-election move from the government. And it's kind of just up in the air as to how effective that will be for them. But it's not really tricking anyone that this is anything other than an election ploy. Holly, I know you're a big driver and a big politics nerd. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, the two things that I do more often than anything else is drive and watch the news. No, I don't even have my G1. I have to get it actually before my brother turns 16, because my brother is 6 years younger than me. So if he gets it before I do, I'll never hear the end of it. So that's I straight up do not drive. So this does not affect me even a little bit. But I can definitely see that it's if we give people free stuff, essentially free money that they thought they weren't ever going to get back, of course they're going to like us. They're going to want to reelect us. So even I, a person who does not drive and watches, is well informed, but not as informed about probably provincial politics as maybe I should be. Yeah, it's obviously an election thing.
Yeah, and any party in power does it. So I don't want to be overly critical or whatever. It's always cynical stuff, but they kind of take different forms, right? So for a conservative government, the thing is to give money back or to cut tax money or whatever, like this, right? It's cutting a necessary, an essential fee for anyone who drives. You can't avoid this fee legally anyways. So it's that's kind of the conservative way to do it. Whereas I even just thinking back to 2018 election, when the Liberals were, almost guaranteed a loss. But before that election, they were promising a lot of government spending, which is kind of the the center left way to do that type of election promise thing, right? As opposed to giving you direct cash back that you've spent, it's more promising additional spending is usually how they approach it. So it's two sides of a similar coin. I mean, I prefer the one on the left side, but obviously that's also because of my politics. But they were promising increasing like free tuition and doing the basic income pilot and stuff. And I think those are way more worthwhile than giving people back $200. But hey, I can't knock anyone for taking it. Of course, obviously, it is your money being given back to you. But yeah, it's two sides of the same coin in a way. I'm curious. I know you're not big on politics stuff, but I'm curious if you think this will have an effect though on your average, well, even an average person like you who just happens to drive, right? I mean, is something like this, could that potentially turn the table? Because, and I want to remind you before you answer that, like, buck a beer was a huge impact for a lot of, especially people our age, who ended up voting for Doug Ford. So, just considering that, do you think this will have a similar effect for him?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the buck a beer thing was genuinely a huge thing because I remember the election where he sort of got into office. I was in high school, but I was in my senior year of high school, so it was like some of us could vote. Like some of us had already turned 18. I hadn't, but some people did, and I knew a lot of the people who like it was mostly dudes, but a lot of dudes who would be like, "Hell yeah, I'm voting for Doug Ford. Buck a beer, that's great." It was like, one, you're 18. Where are you buying a beer for a buck? But two, like, yeah, it's kind of like the elementary school. I'll put soda in the water fountain. Of course, someone's gonna vote for that. It's like you're getting money back. No one's gonna not vote for that, but I think it's a very easy way to sort of not necessarily trick, but maybe just sort of mislead or like distract people who aren't really super well informed.
I think distract is the perfect word because it throws people's priorities into a loop. Like it kind of throws them around because it just becomes very like self-focused, especially when you're giving people back this money like this, like a direct refund of like $200. It turns the focus like inward to yourself and how this one time tiny refund is really impacting you, and then you don't have to pay it the next year or whatever, even though it's likely that the fee will come back either in license plate renewals or it will come back in some other form. Not to burst anyone's bubble, but yeah, it totally throws people's priorities out of whack in terms of like what you should be voting in your government to do. Right? Is the point of government to give you $200 refunds on license plate stickers, or to do like a whole plethora of other actually like important things like pooling our money to properly fund our healthcare? Well, if we're cutting taxes, right? If you're cutting a thing like this sticker, it generates a lot of money. Then where's that money going to come from? Is it going to come from healthcare stuff? Well, it's not necessarily clear. It could come from all types of areas, right? Or they're going to have to potentially raise prices on other things or raise taxes somewhere else. So it's like it distracts because of how like immediate and small its focus is, but I don't think it's how people should look at government personally.
Yeah, like it's very easy to like see like value. I guess like it kind of comes down to the way people see value, like in an immediate sense. Like it's like immediately I have $100. Hell yeah. But like the other way of doing it, it's like cumulatively, I will save a lot of money and live in a society that takes care of people better. But that's difficult to see immediately, especially when nobody is telling you that or like explaining it to you.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it's not really fair to like just stretch this out to try to be more than it is either. It's like it's one fee, and like yeah, it generates a lot of money, but like the budget of the Ontario government is also huge, and it's like I don't actually know exactly what these fees are used to pay for, right? Like it's more just on principle that, especially after the pandemic, like, or, where it's going on, but you know what I mean? That's another election thing, winding it down conveniently just before the election. But anyways, even having gone through the last 2 years, right? Like, all this talk of our long-term care homes are a disaster. Our healthcare is a disaster. Nurses are burnt out. We're getting volunteer people from all over. The military had to come in to take care of old folks. Like, we had a terrible response to this. And then to keep promising to cut more funds to government, like, can we not see how those things might be related, right? How every year we want, or every election we want governments to cut more while providing more for us. It doesn't work. It's not possible.
So for my big winter feature, I decided to write about cryptocurrencies, NFTs, that kind of stuff. The blockchain, which is the thing that links it all together, apparently. I did actually do real research and like find out, how it all works and what's going on. It means that I know far more about this stuff than I actually ever wanted or intended to. But I did talk about some of the stated benefits that are sort of touted by supporters, the idea that it can't be interfered with by governments, the idea that it's revolutionary and futuristic, and like to an extent it can be that, especially the idea of a blockchain, what that means, um, that kind of stuff. But I also talked about, some of the downsides, some of the limitations, the idea that there is a big environmental footprint that comes along with it. It takes a lot of energy to maintain a blockchain. I also talked about just some of the sort of logical sort of fallacies that exist within crypto and NFT. Just the idea that to buy an NFT, you're basically just paying for a receipt that says you bought it because you don't actually, there's nothing that you hold. You just have ownership of something. And when you have ownership of a digital item, that's kind of strange and weird. And then with crypto, sort of discussing the idea that, it's not a Ponzi scheme. They've never been indicted of that. They have been accused of that, and it does fulfill some of the criteria. So that is what I wrote about. It was just sort of a big crypto explainer, basically, is what I wanted to get at. So I guess, Noah, I just wanted to ask you, I guess, is there anything from the article that, like, you didn't know? Or, like, that you learned reading it? Because that's kind of why I wanted to write it.
Well, the first thing I want to point out is that not all of crypto and not specific companies are committing fraud and involved in Ponzi schemes. But like, even just recently, someone was indicted, right, for conspiracy to commit fraud, misleading investors, trying to create a global Ponzi scheme, as it was called. So, I mean, it's not even just a rumor in that community. It is an element of this community at the very least, and even in legal terms. So I can say that fully and openly without without risking any ramifications for us for saying that. It has happened in at least one case. In terms of stuff I learned from your article, I mean, yes, you break down all those things clearly. I've heard some of these basics a couple times, but the blockchain stuff has always confused me. I do like kind of how you explained it, in that it's it's the record of what's going on, right? That is what's replacing the standardized banking system and like the central bank and like those types of regulations on like legitimate and the standard currencies is like something that people are all contributing to, and like, so that part's kind of interesting, still confusing to me, still not sure how that can be kind of like maintained or like adjudicated without a central authority like a government to regulate it. But hey, I don't know. I'm not hip enough, to be honest. If I'm not cool enough, I'm not smart enough. So
It's very much like, I didn't include this in the article because it's insane and complicated, but essentially it's all digitized and computerized. It's depends on like sort of computational math, and I sort of talked about mining in the article, and basically the way that you maintain a blockchain is that you have people mining for crypto. So when they solve those computational math problems and get that crypto, that is in turn maintaining the blockchain, which I think is crazy and insane. Um, Tried to keep that viewpoint out of the article as much as I could. Um, so yeah, that is kind of how a blockchain works. So I guess the other question that I had for you is, a blockchain takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of manpower, even a lot of computational power to maintain. Um, and it's interesting technology. You can't really. It's like it's a digital ledger. So like where you write down records of transactions, but no one can really tamper with it. It can't be interfered with because everything is linked together so chronologically. Which is like to me does seem like quite cool technology and a cool concept. But also, is it worth all of the sort of more negative parts of it?
I certainly don't see it as like a big innovation that deserves us to like rewrite how we do things and like to accommodate it to make it happen. Like I don't see that. It seems very short-sighted and kind of pump and dumpy how it's been treated by people. Like there's celebrities and stuff getting in early, which is not a good sign. If you have to get in early to make money, that's not good. That's not a legitimate business. But you see all these celebrities hawking their NFTs and all this crap, and and they're just trying to kind of push it off to the next person. So it's like that to me seems like the extent of what we're dealing with here. It's like there's sketchy and even actually criminal elements involved, and then there's also just like opportunistic money making elements involved, and it's like those three bedfellows are like, why is they're just barely under the surface, and then on the surface we have like you have crypto.com sponsoring the Staples Center, taking the naming rights there and making it look more legitimate. You had all those commercials in the Super Bowl and elsewhere that again lend it some legitimacy on the surface, but it's like right under that surface is just like scam and scam adjacent stuff, and it's like why should we rewrite society to accommodate this? It does not make sense to me.
Yeah, and like I think to like a large extent we have not rewritten society because of this. Like Bitcoin has been around since like 2009, and like you can't really pay for many things with it. Like some online retailers will take it. It's incredibly rare to see in-person places taking Bitcoin. Any kind of online way that you can sort of exchange Bitcoin for like actual goods and services is very convoluted. You'd just be better off selling the Bitcoin for real money at that point. Um, so that's, I guess, an element of it. And then also to sort of the idea that like they're trying all these advertisements are trying to sort of just lend credibility to the idea of crypto. Yeah, that's totally like exactly what it is because crypto has no inherent value. It's not like, and like obviously to an extent, all money has no inherent value. It only has value because we've agreed it has value. Gold is only valuable because people want it. But like crypto really like there is no embedded value. There's no established value. Um, so what that means is that the only way to make money off of it is by selling it to someone else who wants it. And if no one else wants it, then there's no point in having it, which is, to me, I see the reason why Crypto.com is buying, the naming rights to the Staples Center and why every time you watch a basketball game, there are 800 crypto ads. It's because they're trying to convince other people that it has value so that, the crypto ecosystem can continue to thrive and people can continue to make money off of it. At least that's the way I see it. And, from what you said, the way you see it. The other sort of element of it is like NFTs, which are not crypto. They work using the same technology as crypto. You can kind of buy them with crypto, but you can also buy them with just real regular money. Um, so the thing about NFTs is that they use the same blockchain thing. The receipt of ownership is sort of embedded in a blockchain, but you don't really get anything in real life. You just get the idea that you have something. So I guess, what do you think of NFTs?
There's elements to it that I think could mean something in the future, and I know that's really vague and doesn't mean much, but I think, there's already ways to sell digital art, for artists to sell their art online. Those already exist without NFTs. But if there's any use for an NFT, I guess it's that, technically. In terms of legitimate use, that I think could actually catch on and actually be something legitimate. The rest of it seems, again, very much like crypto. You just need the next person to think that it's worth money so you can dump it on them and make your money. That's pretty much the extent of it, I think. It seems to kind of fall in that category for the most part, other than the slim kind of legitimate lane that it can occupy, but doesn't always.
Yeah, I think even with digital art, there's a lot of actual digital artists who are very anti NFT, because it's insanely expensive to not just buy an NFT, but also they call it minting an NFT. It's expensive to do that, and it takes a lot of computing power to do that, and you either have to pay someone else to do that or pay to do it yourself, as in having all the equipment. So it is kind of cost prohibitive, and if that is the future of digital art, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because you can already just buy digital art. That's a thing you can do. So NFTs, they're not really doing anything super new or innovative except for the whole blockchain thing and the ugly, weird looking bored ape thing. So I guess that is how I feel about NFTs. It's also it has it seems like it would be useful for trading cards, right? Because I talked about the NBA trading cards. It seems like it could be useful for trading cards and being this is the only person who owns this super, super rare trading card, or, the way that the NBA does it, this super rare GIF of a sick dunk or something like that. But then also for me, it's how do you own 3 seconds of an NBA game? That doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, trading cards, it would make sense. But also, there have been digital trading cards since the early 2010s. Those things already exist. There's already been ways to verify that only one person owns this super cool digital trading card. So yeah, the thing with NFTs, it's doing something, but it's not doing anything super worthwhile, in my opinion.
It doesn't seem like it's doing what it sets out to do better.
Yeah. We already have all the stuff it does.
Right. It just is doing it in a more convoluted way that, like you said, requires so much computing power. It's it's just it seems very redundant. At best, it's redundant.
And I think it's deliberately complicated too. I think that people make it sound way more complicated than it is. That's kind of another reason that I want to write the article. Is because people are oh my god, I will never understand crypto. Crypto is so weird, but it's cool. I'll get in on it. And I think it is very important to have a basic understanding of what this even is, because it's not actually as complicated as people make it sound. It is, the concepts behind it are simple, even if the way that it is done is complicated. Obviously, no one can solve computational math problems in their head, but they can understand how that happens.
Right. And that makes sense.
It's quite important because whether you're NFTs are dumb or you're NFTs are the best thing that have ever happened, I think it's important to sort of know what it is before you're even, before you have to have an opinion on it. And it does seem like everyone wants to / has to have an opinion on it.
Yeah. Good to know about this stuff. And I think I'm personally going to stay away from it. But hey, people can do what they want. And lastly, we didn't want to go through this week without touching on the invasion of Ukraine. Hatham wrote about it. He shared his thoughts on it. And then he also kind of wrote about it in a different way by talking about doom scrolling, which, I mean, isn't new to the Ukrainian crisis, but kind of it brought that back into light. And it offers a good example of it, where we're feel kind of trapped into staying online and consuming stressful and negative and anxiety-inducing content because we feel powerless to fix anything, to be a part of a solution. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think there's a lot of people kind of falling into that rabbit hole, into that area, and I think I've certainly done it before, so I feel like I relate to that. So I thought that those kind of go together and are worth looking at, both of them. I also wrote about the invasion from the perspective of Russian citizens, specifically those who are not, involved in the invasion whatsoever, and that there's a desire to punish Russia for what they've done, which it makes sense. I get it, but some of these proposed ways that people want to kind of stick it to them are more so sticking it to innocent Russian civilians, which I know is not new. A lot of wars punish innocent civilians, but I just don't think it's never been right, and it's not right now either. So with that, curious if you have any thoughts worth sharing on the invasion. I know that a lot of things have been covered, so if we don't need to go into it if we don't feel like we have anything to add. But I'm just curious if you have any kind of unique perspective or take on it.
Mostly just that I hope people are gonna be okay. I don't like seeing people hurt and suffering, and that goes for all parts of the world. Ukraine is just the one that we are paying most attention to right now. So I hope that everyone's all right. I hope that the Russian soldiers, who are mostly people who are our age, who have been sort of conscripted to fight in a war that they don't know a whole lot about, I hope that they get home safe. I hope that all of the Ukrainian people who now have to flee for their lives are able to be safe, and I hope that in some capacity they are able to get their homes back, whatever that means to them. Yeah, mostly my thoughts are just that it's terrible, and I hope that people find ways to survive it and be all right and are supported by the world.
Yeah, I'll just completely echo you on that. I don't know if there's some of these topics like this type of stuff. How much do we really have to add? You know what I mean? It's kind of been touched on. So I totally agree with what you said, and we'll kind of leave that part of it there. But now we can kind of move more into the places we took it this week with the articles. So first up, Hatham's doom scrolling piece. So I'm just curious if you have any experience with doom scrolling personally, or any other, friends or family, or if you think it's real, or if you don't really agree with how he described it, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a scroller, I guess. I don't know if I've ever considered it doom. I definitely I've kind of even written papers about the 24 news cycle, and social media, to me it does seem like an extension of the 24-hour news cycle, just like the whole cable TV news thing, with getting as much information as possible, and if there's not information, making stuff up to be interesting. So to me that is kind of what doom scrolling feels like an extension of. I am a person who generally would much rather know what is going on, even if it's bad, than not know what's going on, or only know parts of it. So I definitely do maybe over scroll and over research things that are going on, things that I see. So yeah, maybe that's something I need to work on. We'll see.
Yeah, it seems like a personal kind of thing, but I think we see it a lot. A lot of posting online in support of things, and movements and whatnot, and there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. But I do agree with Hatham. I do think it's kind of a sign of our feelings of powerlessness and hopelessness to change things and want it's kind of just the expression of what is left for you. So I get it. I've kind of moved away. I definitely was in that where I needed to know all about every single issue and follow everything as close as possible. But it is so entirely draining to do that. I'm actively trying not to do that ever again for that reason. I think it's just it does put too much. I think it puts too much on people's plates. I do have to agree there. And yeah, I think keeping things at a safe distance from your, just from your everyday thought, I think it's healthy. Not to dismiss things or, not take things seriously or anything like that, but just to make sure that you are, you're prioritizing your mental well-being above. Oh, I have to share this story on Instagram or Twitter, right? I have to get this out there because everyone needs to know. It's I think we put too much emphasis on ourselves and what we can do quite often, and it's not healthy.
Yeah, I think the problem also, you talked about the posting part of it. I think that is also a big part of the problem because it's not just about scrolling. I've noticed it's about scrolling, finding I don't know, the best Instagram infographic, and posting that to your story, and then just sort of people assuming that if you're not talking about it, you either A, don't know about it, or B, don't care about it. And personally, I like to know stuff. I like to stay informed. I do like to, if something is happening, I will seek out news sources. But I don't tend to sort of tweet or Instagram story share about it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't know or don't care. It just means that it's my voice lends absolutely nothing to this conversation or this issue. If there is an issue that my voice would lend, something to, I would probably use it. But I don't know a lot about the geopolitical realities of the former countries of the Soviet Union. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how I can help. So I'm just going to mind my business, get informed, know what's going on if I want to. Yeah, so I guess part of doom scrolling is that feeling of obligation to not only know about it, but to sort of performatively tell other people that you know about it.
Yeah, and that's the biggest wrench into things, right? Because before, everyone used to watch the news, right? There's the 3 channels of news, and you didn't have internet or social media, so everyone watched the news, right? But not everyone at that point put a sign in their window yes, I am against this thing that I saw in the news, and I support this thing I saw in the news, and right, people didn't put their bumper stickers on for every single issue, and you know what I mean? You didn't have that. You had the public sphere where you would talk about things, but you didn't have this social media where you have to essentially you don't have to, but for a lot of people, it's you provide proof that you know this thing or care about this thing, or otherwise you are part of the problem or you're complicit, right? And it's that's not really a healthy way to look at things either,
Yeah, for sure.
It's weird.
It's I'm just gonna assume that the people I know, and the people that follow me do not follow me for my political opinions on Ukraine. That's not something I'm particularly well known for. So why would I be the person to try and tell them about that? It's also so easy to sort of. We saw it a lot with people sort of accidentally giving money to neo-Nazi group because they just clicked on any donation link that someone posted because they didn't know actually what was going on. And so they were, falling prey to misinformation because it was so easy to spread misinformation because, people didn't No, they weren't getting their information from super reliable sources, and that was because everyone was sort of infographicing about it.
Yeah, there's definitely downsides to it, and that's a big part of it is doing the wrong, like actually doing harm in your, in your effort to appear, the most virtuous about something or the most on top of things. And yeah, that's what I mean. It is dangerous to ourselves, but also can be harmful to, the things we'd like to support. So this one you might, well, I know you have some takes on because you kind of wrote about the same thing with the Beijing Olympics. But I'm curious your thoughts on, international sporting organizations and whatnot trying to ban Russian athletes from competing, or not trying to. Some are contemplating it. Others are just like kind of public figures have been talking about it and trying to urge them. So I'm curious, as our resident SPIMA expert, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've been talking about a lot in my classes. Like, it's a tricky line to walk because on one hand, like you allow a Russian team, like Team Russia, to compete somewhere. You allow them, like at the Olympics right now, they're not allowed to compete as Russia. What are they competing? Right now, I think they're competing as the Russian Olympic Committee. So they can't have their flags and they can't have their anthems, but they have the flags on their uniforms. They are, everyone knows that they're Russia. And like if you let like a pseudo Russian flag jumpsuit that is to an extent, I guess, sort of legitimizing the country and their actions. But then there's also the idea of not letting them compete at all, especially not just in international sports, but in individual sports. So, like, the World Tennis Association being like, if you're Russian, you can't compete in, sports leagues, saying, we're considering sending Russian players back, basically, saying that, they can't play. And I think that is quite wrong. I think that doesn't help anybody, that doesn't help the cause. It also, I think, actively puts people in danger. It puts Russians in danger, especially Russians who have left the country, who might, still have family there, because the idea of if you speak out against the war, there is always the potential that, they can find your family, they can freeze your family's assets, they can freeze your assets that are in Russia. So I think, like, I'm very against the idea of punishing individuals for the actions of the state, especially, if they had nothing to do with it. Many of them, probably are in direct opposition to it, but don't know how to say that without hurting themselves or their families. So, yeah, I think applying sanctions broadly, as in saying no Russians allowed, I think that is the wrong approach, I guess, to, sum up my very long-winded, strange tangent.
Well, I agree, and it's tough because, as you said with your Olympic stuff, it's not. There's no interest in banning, certain countries for their actions. You know what I mean? Like, while this is going on, you still have, uh, bombing runs throughout the Middle East and parts of Africa, being done by the United States, for example. So it's like there's no, just because this is the thing that's caught the social media by storm and is getting people to do kind of their performative part to care and to appear like they're taking action. Uh, just because this is the one that's caught on, it's like it doesn't make it right to go to all these lengths to punish any and all people who claim to be Russian, right? Like it's totally unbalanced, I think, and it just certainly unfair to those who are just average Russian citizens not involved in this invasion whatsoever.
Yeah, I think Russian citizens have they've already been very punished by their state a lot. The state exercises a lot of control over the lives of Russians, especially Russian athletes, because they are seen as, they're seen as ambassadors to an extent within the world of sport. So it's hard and it's difficult to decide. They're not easy decisions to make on an international level. It might be different because Russia has invaded the Ukraine. They violated in invading the Ukraine during the Paralympics. They violated the Olympic truce, basically, which is point blank. They broke the rule, so they shouldn't be allowed to compete under a Russian flag. But is that to say that a Russian who has nothing to do with this, who's trained their entire life, who might even be sort of wholly against it, should they be punished for that? Or are we better off using sanctions to target, the oligarchy in Russia? Are we better off, seizing second passports that a lot of Russian billionaires have? Are we better off, dismantling the shell companies that a lot of them use to store their wealth in? I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. That is, something that I think a lot of people, as someone who's been to a couple SPEMA classes in the past few days, that a lot of people in sports are still sort of grappling with and trying to figure out the idea between. I had a professor say, a classmate of mine referred to sanctions as discriminatory. And my professor sort of just stood there and thought about it, and he was like, "Yeah, actually, it is. At its core, it is discrimination, but is it, discrimination for the right reasons?" And I don't think it is. I don't think lashing out at individual Russians is the way to punish the actions of a government and of a state, I guess.
Yeah, they're the least deserving of any of the backlash for this. And look, these are not at all related. I'm not at all trying to conflate these two. But I mean, in previous wars in Canada and the U.S., we've treated people terribly because we were at war with their country. That extending the treatment, or you're thinking of one country and its leadership, and extending that to all people and saying because they were born from that patch of dirt, right? They happen to be born living in that country, like that they are by extension the same, or that they deserve the same treatment. Like that is a sketchy road to start down on. It's not good.
Yeah, I think just the idea that by and large, a lot of people in Russia do not support this war. I don't know if you've seen, there have been videos of a lot of anti-war demonstrations in Moscow and St. Petersburg, which is super dangerous for those people. That's something that that is arrestable in Russia, but people are still showing opposition, or you'll hear stories of Russian soldiers not knowing what's going on because most of them have been conscripted. And so the idea that all of these people represent sort of the will of Putin, basically, I think that that's just not true, and it's wrong to, I think, punish people for that. Obviously, stuff has to be done though. I'm glad I'm not the one who has to figure it out though.
Yeah, I wrote about that exactly. I said, we should just abandon these anti-war protesters who, thousands have been arrested, like you said, and it's pretty ridiculous, I think, to want to abandon those folks because of the actions of their state that they have no control over. It doesn't help that they're also not in a democratic country, so they have even less control over what their government does, right? They don't even have that level of accountability for them that we have and take for granted. So, yeah, when people take the time to think about it, I think they realize that there's a better way than to say that, like to say Russians are bad because Russia has done this. Like that's ridiculously simplistic and highly problematic, and does not lead to anything constructive, in my opinion. All right, well, that does it for another episode of The Latest. Thank you, Holly, for joining me to talk about these great articles, and thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. For just having two of us, I think we did a very good job. I think we kept it alive, so that's good. We're happy to have someone back next week, but it was a good one-on-one. Remember that you can find the full articles that we talked about here today and many, many more at our website, www.brockpress.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. On top of following us on social media, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Just be sure to look up The Latest, the Brock Press Podcast, and you can find us with no issues. You can also find the podcast on our YouTube channel and on our website. With all that said, thanks again, and we will see you next time for another episode of The Latest.